Robbery was based on a story about how in real life, when Jerry was a student, his apartment would get robbed quite often because they'd be able to break through the walls, apparently. In this episode, the story was Jerry went away for a few shows in Minneapolis for a few days. And while he was gone, Elaine stayed at Jerry's apartment. More so because Elaine just wanted to get out of hers and get away from her actress roommate who she could not stand. Then again, there was a lot of people Elaine could not stand, let's put it that way. But when Jerry came back, he came to the apartment, and he sat down and goes to turn on the TV, and there's no TV there. And he's just like, what's going on here? Kramer comes in, he's like, like he knew something was up. And Elaine comes in, of course, shortly afterwards, and she knew something was up too. And that's when he told Jerry that he had been robbed. Elaine had went out to run some errands. Kramer came into the apartment to borrow the spatula because he was cooking. And he got distracted, and he was like, well, I was just going to come right back over after I was done cooking, so I left the door open. It's like, why would you still do that? So left the door open, and I guess the robber went in there, took his TV, his VCR, his answering machine, his stereo, basically all Jerry's big electronics. And also, apparently, Jerry didn't have insurance. And then Jerry, well, of course, Kramer was like, why would you not have insurance? And then Jerry's like, I spent the last of my money on some special lock that he made for his apartment door. He goes, it has one flaw, though. The door shuts it, but be closed! It's kind of like one of those things where it's like, he's telling a serious story. Well, he was serious, but it was just like, you think he was just, just telling something else, but he still had on his mind, like, you basically got my place robbed. So Kramer, of course, felt, horrible about it, of course, and of course Elaine again was out, so nothing she could do. But Elaine already called the police. They came. They even admit to, they don't think they're going to find this stuff. Somehow Jerry still had a stereo, an answering machine, and a TV, though, the next episode, but, never really got told as to how he got the stuff back. But in the midst of all that, though, Elaine kept saying she wanted to move out of her apartment. She was tired of being with her actress of a roommate. And Jerry was complaining about all different things going on that was wrong in his apartment building, and she's just like, move out. And George told him too, move out. And then George said he heard about this apartment, a 2-bedroom apartment, which Jerry says, yeah, I don't know if I need a 2-bedroom apartment. I haven't had much luck with one, which was actually, as I mentioned in the previous episode, the first couple episodes, Jerry didn't have, he had just a sofa couch. He apparently had just a studio apartment. But this was where they introduced him having a bedroom. So, he had, where was it at? Not trouble maintaining activity in one apartment, but then finally Jerry was just like, fine, whatever. And Elaine was like, yeah, and I can move into this apartment, but again, Jerry was like, why would you want to move into a place like this? You were just saying it was crap. She goes, it's better than living with her actress roommate. So they toured this apartment, and it was a really nice 2-bedroom apartment. George, though, who had known about it beforehand, though, didn't know about some things. Like there was a patio, there was a fireplace, there was a walk-in closet, there was things that George was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this. So Jerry looks around, he's like, the rent's a little bit more, but he goes, I'm, in better shape financially. He goes, I'm taking it, I'm moving. But then in the next scene, though, well, first off, Jerry and Elaine were, negotiating over the couch. Because, again, Elaine was going to take Jerry's apartment. But there was some things that Jerry wanted to take, some things that he was going to, let Elaine have, but he was going to sell it to her. George comes in with the lease. And Jerry's just about to sign it. But then George starts saying stuff like, if you're uncomfortable and can't do this, it's totally okay. And then Jerry's like, what are you talking about? And that's where Jerry started getting these hints, these signals, Jerry, signals! Just like make a reference from the first episode. the pilot episode. But um, that 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 George wanted the apartment, which it was obvious that George, who didn't realize there was much more to his apartment than he thought it was, wanted the apartment. So they start bickering over it, and Jerry's like, fine, I'm not going to take it. And then they argued about it, and Jerry's like, oh, okay, fine, I'll still take it or whatnot. And then later they go out to eat, and then they start arguing over it again. And at that point, neither of them want to take the apartment. And Elaine also, of course, in the midst of all this, was like, okay, who's taking the apartment? Whoever's taking the apartment, I'm taking your place. Of course, she said she preferred George's place because George's place had carpeting. But in the end, they argued over it. They decided not to take the apartment because it was just they were fighting over it. At the same time, there was a waitress there who was looking for a place. She took the place, and they moved in, and everybody kept introducing them as like, oh, the people who turned down the apartment got this nice place for us, and it turned out really nice. And they started, of course, raving about the things that they were doing at the apartment that that Jerry or George could have done at the apartment. And yeah, they lucked out. And at the end, there was someone talking about an apartment that was opening up and that they're moving out of, and then Jerry and all three at the same time just goes, "What's the rent?" And that's how the episode ends. Because of course, I don't think any of them ever moved out of their places at that time. So unfortunately, friendships fighting over, an apartment just got the best of them. So, okay episode. I would say not quite as, good as the first couple, but it was okay. An okay episode, just a simple story, nothing too funny. Of course, the first five episodes, at least, after watching them all, there really hasn't been much of a story for, this is probably the first episode that George kind of got involved in the main story. Other than, being like a kind of like a supporting character, in the first one, whenever he was basically, trying to help Jerry figure out whether or not, this girl coming in to stay with him was something or not. He didn't really have like a big main story. In the mail and bonding, kind of, he had like a sub story, but not like a huge big deal of a story. Same with the stakeout. He was just there supporting Jerry, helping him, get Vanessa. And in this one, I felt was the first episode that George kind of had more of like a focal point in the story, since he was kind of like colliding with Jerry when he decided he wants that apartment as well. He gets a little more of a focus also in the stock tip, the next episode. Of course, Elaine, she was in the first one. Second one, she kind of just appeared and helped Jerry. Kramer's been the only one, though, so far that I feel like has not really had like a, besides him, teasing his Kramerica Industries and his pizza, build your own pizza shop idea. Kramer hasn't really had a big focal. He's kind of more so like just a guy just like sitting in the back, he's just watching things unfold basically so far, which is also what he did in the stock tip as well. The only other fact I have about this episode was this is the episode, and they didn't say what it was, but Larry David officially, I guess there was some issues with the storyline and the script that he came up with an idea to kind of like fix it. And Castle Rock was very impressed that the next day he gets a $20,000 bonus and is told, if this show gets picked up, you're the executive producer. Which is kind of like that moment where even though Larry David kept thinking, this is all I'm doing, that's it, and it kept going on longer and longer and longer, kept saying, I can't do this. This, though, was kind of like a turning point for Larry David to think, okay, this is still my show, you're not completely trying to ruin it, and we are good here. But yeah, that's my thoughts on The Robbery, the fourth episode of Season 1 of Seinfeld. What are your thoughts on this episode, guys? Do you have any other fun facts you would know about this episode? As always, make sure to leave your thoughts down in the comments section below. Slap a like on the video, subscribe for more content on my channel, and follow me on Twitter at DemandAirBoy93. I'll see you guys in the fifth and final episode of the 5-episode Season 1, which is the stock tip. So until then, guys, I'm checking out. I'll see you all later. Have a good night. Peace out, everybody.